Our interview this morning is with Paul H. Smith. Paul was born in Millwood, Kentucky, February of 1928. He served in the United States Army Air Corps from February of 1946 until January of 1949. His highest rank attained was Corporal. This interview is conducted at Burleson, Texas on Friday, January the 21st, 2011. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Mr. Smith in any way. Also in the room we have Dennis Smith, Paul's son, and also we have Milton Gibson and Gary Burton, who are our videographers. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and for Operation Remember, City of Burleson, Texas. And with that little introduction, Paul, you can tell us your story of when you were in the U.S. military, sir.
I had three brothers. They was already in the service, and I wasn't old enough. But waiting to get older, I didn't seem like I could ever become old enough. So then I decided to join. I first went to join the Marines, and they turned me down on color blindness. And then I went to the Air Corps, and they accepted me, and so I joined the Air Corps February the 5th, 46. I went to San Antonio, Texas, took my basic training. It was a sack field at that time. And then went from San Antonio to Spokane, Washington, which I went to trade school. And from there I went to Fort Francis C. Warren, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and went in the 801st Combat Engineer Battalion. I went to the commanding officer and told him I didn't join the engineers. I didn't join the Army. I joined the Air Corps. And why was I in the engineers? And he said, "Oh, you're still in the Air Corps, but you just attached to the engineers." And that's the way it went. You know, I spent 3 years in there and never was in the Air Corps. Spent all 3 years in the combat engineers. And when I got ready for discharge, well, they give me a choice. That's when in 47, the first part of 48, the Air Corps went to the Army, got out of the Army and went to the Air Force. And I had a choice of either getting discharged in the Army or the Air Corps. I said, I joined the Air Corps, I'm gonna stay in it. So that I got discharged out of the Air Corps. Anyhow, I went to San Antonio, Texas, and took my basic training, and then went to Spokane and took a trade school, and then from there I was assigned to the 801st Combat Engineer Battalion, and took advanced training for combat engineers, and then was sent to Fort Francis C. Warren, and was assigned to they did away with the 801st, and they had 3 other battalions that they made up, 1932, 1933, and 1934. And I was assigned to 1934. All 3 of these battalions went to Alaska. I was sent to Fort Whittier. It was named Camp Sullivan, where the soldiers stayed, and they had it was an isolated fort, and it was a secret port. it was set up to supply all the camps in Alaskan area. The Japanese was trying to take over Aleutian Islands and come into Alaska. And this is the only place that they could get their supplies was through this port. We was, and it was run by, wasn't run by the Army. We was there to just maintain it, keep it up, and keep the roads open to transfer the supplies. And it was quite a chore because at that time we didn't know that it was a secret port, that we didn't know that it was a secret place. But the only way in the world you could get in there was through ship or the train out of Anchorage. They built a train, a railroad to Whittier to run the supplies to the other camps in the Alaskan area. And we was all time having alerts. They would come up and get us all out and say, we've got word that there's Russian subs in the area that we need to get out and keep them straight. But it was and it kind of bad whenever you get out in 30 or 40 foot of snow to set up a 50 caliber machine gun, sit out there and wait for somebody to come in, never shows up. But it kept you busy. And snow is unbelievable. The winter that we was there was probably the worst winter they'd had in 50 years. It was snowed, just constant. And if it wasn't snowing, the wind was blowing and you think it was snowing. It was real common to have a 70-mile wind, real common. You couldn't, we'd all in Quonset huts. All of the barracks and everything was made out of Quonset huts. And that winter we had 42 foot and 8 inches of snowfall. It covered the Quonset huts. You had 10, 15 foot of snow on top of them. That was the only thing they could build in there and stand up under the pressure and everything. And we'd have to get on top of that stuff and crawl around up there, and our pipes from our stoves, we'd have to extend them so they'd dig out and build them up where we could extend the pipes where you didn't need much heat because you was say you was under 10 or 12 foot of snow, and it didn't take much to heat a Quonset hut. But we'd get up in the morning, lots of times we'd wake up, or they'd wake us up, and we'd have to get out and start moving snow. All the time, nights, keep the roads open, and have to keep the docks cleaned up so you get in and out, and shovel snow. And then in the summertime, we built Quonset huts and just kept everything in operating position. But it was really an isolated place. There was nothing going on except your chores to keep things opened up. And that little train come in once a day. It would come down, pick up supplies, and move them out to the other camps. But that's the only way in the world that they could had food or anything like that. And all your food that you had was frozen food, and powdered eggs and powdered milk. We killed a lot of our meat. We'd kill a moose and bring it in. The old mess sergeant, well, he'd fix it up, and everything was stew. I ate enough stew to float a battleship. But it turned out he was a good stew man. I mean, he could fix stew. And I had a real good friend that was a mess sergeant, and I asked him, I said, why in the world do we have so much stew? He said, well, you can take anything and make stew. So we had bear stew, moose stew, and it turned out pretty good. But our eggs and milk is just unbelievable. Most of the eggs is powdered milk. I don't know whether you ever eat powdered milk before, but I mean, drink it or eat powdered eggs. But when you eat powdered eggs, you pretty near got rid of eating eggs. That they was bad. But the year we said we only had to serve a year up there. They'd pick you up and when your year was up, well, they'd transfer you out and bring another battalion in or something. But it was an isolated place, and wasn't really much to do except just work, and there's a lot of that went on. But I met the sergeant I was talking about in the mess hall. We became real good friends. He was from Clarksville, Tennessee, and we turned out to be just real good friends. And after we got out of service, why, we stayed friends. If he got something special to come into the mess hall, he'd come by. We was in different barracks because he was a cook and I was an engineer. But he'd come by and wake me up. He'd come over one morning and tried to wake me up, and he reached up there and grabbed me, and I jumped out of bed on him and knocked him down. Boy, I mean, really getting him. And he would, after that, well, he'd come by and he'd get up to the head of the bed and come in there, and he'd reach in and poke me. so I wouldn't jump on him. And he told me, he said, I'm not coming in there no more. And I said, just come up there and get underneath there and get me. I said, I won't hurt you. He said, foot. But anyhow, he would like, if you did get a few eggs in, well, he'd always get me, and we'd go down that morning. He'd come in and wake me up, and we'd go down that morning, and he'd fry me eggs for breakfast, and that would be something else. But our milk, we didn't have no milk. The milk was all powdered. I know I had to go to Kodiak, Alaska, and I went in there, and their mess hall was all just really nice. Now that was a Navy base in Kodiak, and Marines and the Navy was there, and their food was outstanding. So went in to eat, and he was serving the meal, and they come up there and he said, put a quart of milk on my tray, and he said, that's for you and your buddy. And I said, what? He said, that's for you and your buddy behind you. I said, he's no buddy of mine. He said, that's for you and your buddy. I said, he's not my buddy. He just reached over and got one and put on his tray. So I wound up with a quart of milk, and drank every bit of it too. But that's the only time that I was up there that I had fresh milk. It turned out real good. But old Frank Doherty was a really, and you know, I lost contact with him. I guess we were separated for probably 30 years. And couldn't find him. I went to Clarksville, Tennessee, and tried to find him, couldn't find him. And on one Christmas, we were sitting there talking about it, and there was one of my a sister to my brother's wife was talking about true friends. And she said, did you think you ever had a true friend? And I said, I asked her, I said, you really know what a true friend is? She says, yeah, I think I do. I said, a true friend is a person that will do anything in the world for you. If you need help, he'll help you. And he'll lay down his life for you. I said, that's a true friend. I said, if you have one true friend through a lifetime, then you're lucky. And I said, I had a true friend. And lost contact with him, couldn't find him. And she said, well, why couldn't you find him? I said, I tried everywhere. I went to Clarksville, Tennessee, and looked all over for him, just never could find him. And she said, her nephew was there. And she said, Kobe, could you find him? He said, sure, I'll find him. If he's on the internet, I'll find him. And you know, he got on that internet and started looking it up, and he kept messing, and he finally found a Frank Doherty, but it had no address, no phone numbers or nothing. And so I remembered, I told her, I said, now, he married a girl from Guthrie, Kentucky. I said, her name was Catherine Brown. I said, see if you can find her. So he found a Catherine Brown Doherty. And I said, that's her. And then I got his phone number and called her, and she squealed and carried on. He said, where in the world have you been? And I said, well, I've been looking for you all. She said, we've been everywhere looking for you. I said, well, I'm not there no more. That's where you can find me. But anyhow, I made a trip to Kentucky after that. I went just no time. I went up to my brother's and borrowed his car and went down to see him. And we've been contacting each other and been good friends for the last, 16 years, I guess we've been. But he's still a good friend. But he's one of and I guess that's probably the only really good friend I had in the service was him. He was, anything he'd do, you ask her, he was there. That he was really a good friend. And but I've gone to see him several times, and he's been down here to see me. But as far as and then after I left Whittier, Alaska, I came back to Scott Field, Illinois. I didn't have that much time left in the service. My enlistment would be up, and so that, and I came back there and was discharged out of Scott Field, Illinois. And that's when I got to stay in the Air Force. It sure was but they always wanted you to re-enlist, after you. But so I told them I thought I had enough of it, so I didn't. But it was a quite experience. I've thought of it quite a bit, and really the only reason I went into service was because I had 3 brothers in there. And but I was in basic training in San Antonio, and one of my brothers, it'd been probably 3 years since I'd seen him, and he let me know that he was back at States and was getting ready to on furlough, and I wanted to know if I could get off and come home. Went to commanding officer and asked him for leave. He said, you're not even through basic yet. I said, no, we can't let you go. So I said, well, foot. Went down the railroad track and went over and hit a highway and finally got into San Antonio. Went down there to bit me a bus ticket home and come up there, and I think the ticket was like $29 and something to come to Kentucky. and I didn't have that much money, so I had to go back to camp as AWOL. So I got me a 7-day KP out of that deal, and so it was. I didn't get to see my. I told the commanding officer. I told him. I said I haven't seen my brother in 4 years. He said, "Well," I said, "you just have to put up with that stuff." I said I haven't seen mine in 6. so, they always have something a little worse, and make you feel a little better. But I don't regret a minute of joining the service. If it hadn't been for the service, I'd have never made what I made today. I went in the service, I only had a 7th grade education. And I didn't, I was working at the LN Railroad, got laid off. My brother was going to college at Campbellsville, Kentucky, Campbellsville College, and when I got laid off, he told me, he said, "Come down and I'll get you enlisted and get you enrolled in college." I said, "Bill, I couldn't get to college." I said, "I didn't even finish the 7th grade." He said, "Come down, we'll fix it, we'll get you." So I went down there and signed up, and they put me in on the GI Bill, and I went to work my high school. You had to take 12 hours of college to stay in the GI Bill, but they worked me in there, and I took 4 courses of high school. I took math, English, geography, and history. I had passed them 4. And the first year I was there, I worked off my high school and took my had college that I had to have, and got my high school through the college, and then graduated from the college with an associate degree. And of course, I have to credit my older brother for that, because if it hadn't been for him, I'd have never done that, and I'd have been digging ditches the rest of my life. So it's the service is what probably made it for me, and service has helped many and many people, but after World War II, it seemed like they kind of got down on the service people and had a hard time. But man, it's been it made life for me. I know that, and so I don't regret my service record. And I found out a lot about Whittier, Alaska, after I got out, and me and Frank would talk about it, and I didn't know that they had built that port on a secret basis. It was a secret port. It was a secret, top secret. That's the only way they could get the supplies into them. And after you get back and get to thinking about it, well, it was a good cause. It was a good cause to be in the service. And so I'm glad of my service record.
Thing you just said, just said, Paul, it was a secret base. Today, we're 65 years later. No way in the world that would be a secret with the satellites and everything we have in it.
Right.
The change, it seems like a relatively short period of time for all of these changes we've seen in the whole world.
Yeah.
But it was a secret then. It was
top secret.
Hush, hush. Yeah.
You didn't tell nobody. And our letters and that we sent out. Of course, I didn't write no letters. I was in there for 3 years and got 2 letters in 3 years.
Mom didn't send you no letters?
Mother died.
Oh, okay.
Now, I got a paper. We had a paper there at Litchfield, Kentucky, that sent all service boys. If you lived in that area, they would send you that paper every month. And it was called a Litchfield Gazette. And they'd send that paper to you and have all the news, everybody that died and everybody that married and everything. This boy that was in our outfit, he was from Litchfield. And he came up there one day and he said, Paul, do you know William Dean Smith? I said, yeah, that's my brother. He said, look here. And there was his picture in the paper, him and a girl. I looked at that and it said, they're married. Now this paper was always about 3 months late getting there. But I looked at that thing and I read it and I said, now that's something else, your brother getting married and not even letting you know about it, not even telling you that you're getting married. So I said, can I cut that out? He said, sure. So I cut it out and I wrote on there, news travels fast, and just put it in an envelope and sealed it up and sent it to him. Didn't say who it was from or nothing, you know. And I never did go to mail call. All the time I was in the service, I never went to mail call because there wasn't nothing there. And old Frank come up there one day and he said, Paul, they called your name out in mail call. I said, who in the world would be writing me? He said, I don't know, but I think it's a pretty good write because I want you to look at this thing. And he was a very big letter, you know, big thick thing. And he wrote me a 6-page letter and apologizing for not letting me know he got married and all that. But you know, I had 3 brothers, and all 3 of them got married in 48. And so they got a 6-page letter from him. So that broke my record.
Let me go back. You went in the Army Air Corps, and they made you an engineer. In 3 years of active time, you ever go on an airplane?
I flew from Anchorage to Kodiak. Now that was on the Army, and I flew from San Antonio to on a C-47, but that was a hop ride. In other words, my grandma had died, and they let me go to the funeral, and that was the only 2 times I was in a plane in them 3 years. It wasn't even at our airport. That's my engineers. I was wiped out of the Air Corps. I was flat an engineer.
When you go back to your brothers, what branches were they in?
2 oldest brothers, they was both in the Air Corps.
Okay.
One of them went to South Pacific, and the other one went to Europe. My oldest brother, he had the hardest time. He was in a lot of fighting, and he had a landing ship that they was landing on was blowed out from under him, and he saved a bunch of lives in that, going out and getting them and bringing them back, bringing them in. And he got a I guess it was Silver Star he got out of that. But he come out with a pretty good deal on his. But he was never injured. And next my oldest brother, he was a glider pilot. And so he had quite a time with gliders. And then my brother just above me, he was in the infantry. And he was getting ready to ship to, I forget what, seemed to me like it was, I forget what island he was going to, but when they dropped the atomic bomb, they was on the ship ready to ship out. And when they dropped that, well, then they stopped his.
Any of your brothers still with you?
My oldest brother, he died of lung cancer, but the other two still living. Yeah, Bill he's 87 now, and Kurt's 84. And but they're in far. Kurt's brother, a little older than me. He's in real good health. Yeah. But the older brother, he's not quite as good health, but he gets around good and everything. He got a good mind and all that. That means a whole lot, don't it? But Bill had the oldest brother. He had the hardest time, and I'll just change this a little bit here. We went to when we were going to Campbellsville College. There was three of us brothers was going at the same time, and I had a cousin that was in Patton's army. He was there, and we had a veterans people there, you know. I was sergeant at arms by rights, and they had a picture of us raising the flag, and all four of us was in this picture, you know. And the magazine came out from Campbellsville about this, and then had their pictures in there. It says, "Does anybody recognize these soldiers?" And I looked at that thing, and I said, "I want you to look at there. There's all three of us, me and my two brothers and my cousin, in that picture." And this was probably probably 7 or 8 that this magazine come out. And I looked in there and I said, I cut that thing out and sent it back to him. And I said, they were on there, I said, 3 brothers and a cousin graduated from there, and said all of them has been, at this time, he said, all of them has been married over 50 years, same person, and probably plan on doing 50 more. but and my oldest brother, he's been married 60. Well, he got married in 48, and of course his wife's dead. Of course, my other brothers passed away, but all of them are over 60, been around in 60 years of marriage, same person. Don't see that very often nowadays.
You bet. I got a couple more questions here, Paul. 42 feet of snow.
42 foot and 8 inches. Those don't leave that 8 inches off of there.
That's a lot of snow. These Quonset huts, you went up there and you kept putting extensions on the stovepipes.
Yeah.
What about incoming air? Did you have to do the same thing with incoming air? Did you have to get fresh air from outside?
No.
How'd you get the?
We just
had enough holes and cracks and what have you that the air.
Yeah.
Okay.
We never had fresh air. They never put no air in there. We got plenty of air, but we had to have what they do. They'd get covered up and wouldn't draw. So.
Oh, okay.
See, that's the only reason we'd have.
What'd you burn for heat? Fuel oil?
Fuel
Yeah,
oil.
okay. Came in 55-gallon drums, I
Yeah.
guess? Okay. Uh, these places that you were in Alaska, there was lots of work, not much other. But did the services have some sort of recreation for you? Bowling alley, basketball court,
No, oh no, no.
No?
Didn't have nothing like that.
ping
No.
pong tables?
No, nah,
I'll be.
no, it wasn't nothing there.
So you got up and you did your 8 or 10 or 12-hour shift?
Yeah.
Went back to the barracks?
Yeah.
What about chow hall, where you had these powdered eggs and powdered milk? Have
They
a
was-
separate chow hall, I guess?
Oh yeah, they was all. They was
It was a
all.
Quonset hut too?
It was Quonset hut too. Everything was there.
Wow.
You know, that Camp 7 Mile that we was at, that we took that advanced training, that was an old 3C camp.
Okay.
It had pot-bellied stoves in there. You burned coal for heat, and you could look out and see cracks through the walls. And it was in the winter time, and and your latrine and everything was outside. It had your boiler was out there fired with wood. We went out and cut wood and fired that up. Your mess halls was all wood stoves and coal. That's what we burnt. We hauled coal out of Gagger Field to with the heat and everything. But it was an old. That's what it was. It was an old 3C camp, and it was quite. We had a. They had take you out and had a survival course that you had to pull, and they'd take you out and you'd drop you in a area, and they give you 7 days to get back. The only thing you took was a Bowie knife and some string and just whatever something like that. No bullets, no nothing like that. Just a knife. Me and Doherty we paired up on that deal. And we shared real good because I'd hunted all my life and when I was a kid. And so we didn't have much trouble. Our squirrels wasn't too good because they were mostly pine squirrels and they're strong. But that's the way we.
Did he make stew from them too?
No, we just built a fire and we didn't have matches either. We had flints to start our fires with, and snow is cold and snowy, and but they would we'd cook them squirrels and stuff. We'd catch squirrels and cook them on that fire. And you know, we shared real good because we could two squirrels, you know, it lasted us a couple of days.
And you spent 7 days.
7 days getting back to camp, and there was a lot of them. That didn't make it back. They had to go in and get them out. But when they didn't pass the course, well then they almost kick you, just about kick you out of the engineers if you didn't pass that survival course. But me and Doherty, we kind of had fun on the deal. You know, we really didn't bother us because if there was anything around, we'd find it to eat.
I got a couple things here, Dennis, and then we'll. You've talked about a lot of things, Paul, that have certainly changed. You know, the secret base and the fact we couldn't have a secret base. Some of the barracks. Now, I was in a barracks in 1963 and woke up one morning and there was snow on a rack. You know, so I was in some of those barracks, even in '63, that you could see through the walls. But
Yeah.
You ever see any women when you were in the service? I mean, women who were in the service?
At Fort Francis C. Ward, they had a WAC division there. We would go in and do repair work on the base, and we'd eat. That's where we eat, was at the wax mess halls. And now you talk about something. If you never eat at a wax mess hall, then you need to try it once. They'd come out there and they had plates. You go through and you get your plate. Had glass plates, your cups. You had and all silverware, and they'd cook just exactly what you wanted. You go in for breakfast, they'd fry your eggs, they'd fry your bacon, make you biscuits, and you eat like a human being. Boy, I mean, it was something else to eat at a wax mess hall. But that's about all the women wax that we saw. Was
When you went in 46, Truman was president, I guess,
yes.
right?
Well, now Roosevelt, yeah.
Roosevelt died in 45?
45, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Truman had said he had desegregated the services then, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have black guys in your outfit?
Oh no, that didn't happen. They said they put them in, but they had never tried to. In other words, they hadn't placed them in your barracks, or you wasn't really together yet. That didn't happen until. Well, it didn't happen while I was in. Period. It was already passed, but it hadn't happened yet. There was a talk of it happening, but there was a lot of turmoil and going on during that time about being segregated and everything. But but while I was in it, there was no black in the outfits.
Let me ask you one more thing. You made a comment after the war, the people were down on service people.
Now, World War II.
You didn't get the same reception in the late 40s that the guys that came back in 45 and 46. You didn't get that same pat on the back and
No,
good guy.
no,
Okay.
no.
Talk a little bit about that down on.
I'd
Was
say
it tougher for you to get a job like when you got out?
didn't get none. It's just almost impossible to get a job. You know, they talked about how things had picked up and everything, but you know that wasn't really so. You take it was up in the 50s before you could actually find work to work. That's one reason I went to school. I got laid off at the L&N, and that's what started me to school, because I was laid off. And after I got out of school, you couldn't find a job. I got a job at a Mingles box company. Now you take an associate degree and go in there and you made $105 every 2 weeks. That's what you got paid. And now that's like when I worked at L&N, 86 cents an hour.
But that was before it was when the war was going on, I guess.
No, that was after.
After the war?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
86 cents an hour, and that was a pretty good job, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But I know at Mingles, when I worked at Mingles, they had paid you a rate, but it was like a dollar and a nickel an hour, and you worked on a bonus shift. In other words, you put out so much product, by then they'd give you a bonus on
Piecework.
like.
What was your pay scale while you were in the service?
When I first went in, I get $35 a month. That was what we.
A month.
A month. That's what we.
You get paid once a month?
Once a month.
Got paid in cash, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's always cash.
Paymaster came and He had a big satchel full of money.
Yeah, and sat there and had it all counted out for you. And they had of course, then I became corporal, and then when I went overseas, I got a 20% increase in pay on going overseas, and I got $110 when I was overseas.
How did you, going overseas, how did you get there?
Oh, it was shipped out of Seattle, Washington. It was an Army transport ship. It was the captain and everything was Navy, but the main maintenance and everything of the ship was the Army. It was Army transport. It wasn't a Navy transport. It was and all everything was we had some bad weather going over, and they got real sick. Man, there's a bunch got sick, and when we got to get off, a lot of them had to be carried off. I know Doherty had to carry him off. He was yellow as a pumpkin when we got him out of there. But he was there was a world of them that got. Man, I tell you, you talk about cleaning up messes. I was a non-com, but I didn't have to scrub those floors and everything with the other fellows. But it was a mess keeping things cleaned up. And coming back, it was a whole lot easier. We got a smooth ride back. But we went over and came back on, and that ship was Sergeant E. Meyer. Was the name of the boat. I call it a boat because it wasn't as big as the biggest part of them, And he wasn't run by the Navy either. And coming back, they tried to push it off on us to clean the brass on the ship, But I bucked up against that stuff. I'm not going to polish this thing for somebody else. So.
What kind of weapons were you trained on?
I qualified on a .45 pistol and carbine, M1, and submachine gun, and a .50 caliber. That was a part of my advanced training that you had to.
That 50 jar you a little bit when you fired it?
It wasn't that bad. We had some 30 calibers that we had on these big deuce and a half trucks with a turbine on it, turbine. And now you shoot one off of that thing, now it racks you pretty good. But when we had them down on the ground, they wasn't that bad. I know I've seen movies where sit there, they shake, helmet fall down, and all that stuff. That don't work like that. But that on that turbine, on that truck, we practiced with them like drive by on a silhouette tech target, and it up there, and you could it'd shake you pretty good up there. But they was all 30 calibers.
Were those M1 carbines what you used on the moose and the bear for your chow?
No. I got me a Winchester 72 carbine. It's 32 special, and that's what I used to hunt with. You could get a swell-nosed bullet. They called them silver tips. At the end of the bullet, it was like the very tip of it was a silver, and when they hit something, it swell up about 3 times its size. It mushroom. And man, they was a mean piece of machinery. It did. Of course, all your Army ammunition was steel jacket, and you shoot a moose with a M1, you just go on through him. But this, you hit it, it leaves it. Shoot, it'd make a hole, boy. He'd do a good job. You know, there was an old man up there. We run into him. He told us he knew we'd go out and kill a bear now and then. And he told us, "Now, boys, don't never." He had a 10 gauge shotgun, and he said, "Don't never go bear hunting if you haven't got a shotgun." He said a lot of people think that you're not going to get much done with a shotgun, but that a shotgun will keep him off of you. He said, "Oh, yeah, just don't run out of ammunition." But he said, and he had a big old 10 gauge shotgun. He was kind of an old outwoodsman, you know, but he had that old 10 gauge. He was dandy.
Well, what did you do for recreation?
You know, in the summertime, we had a softball team. It was didn't have much of a diamond, but we had a pretty good softball team. But I think that's the only sport that we was ever in. And I played softball with them. And the fact about it, I knocked the longest ball that's ever been knocked up there. It was really, I think, wound up running around 400 and something feet. Got a home run. But it was good to have something like that once in a while. And but we got to go. Our team got to go to. We got to go to Kodiak and play in a tournament down there. They flew us down there to play in a tournament in Kodiak, and come in second place on that. Should have took first place, but they would let me catch the last game. I got the pinch hit on it and got a hit, but it didn't help matters none. But I was a pretty good hitter, and my oldest brother they called him. I don't know whether you ever heard it or not, but they called him a Texas League hitter. He'd stand up there and just pick that ball just over the infield. Couldn't fan him to save your life.
Hit lots of singles.
All singles and doubles. That was his thing. Never know what a home run was, but you try to fan him, you done messed up. You know, we had this was after we got down to, we was playing ball in school, and we had a pitcher that, man, he was just fanning everybody. I mean, he's hot. And the coach asked him, said, how good can you hit that fella? And Bill said, foot. He said, can you foul a bunch of balls off of him? And he said, yeah, anytime you want me to. He said, well, get up there and just foul them. Just foul balls, foul them. And he got up there, and he saw that, the pitcher saw that he wasn't gonna try to hit, and he didn't want to walk him. He'd even hit balls, you know, so he wouldn't walk. And he got up, he wore that pitcher out. Finally, just knocked one out over the infield and got to first base. He'd run just about as fast as starting off as he did on the run. He was a spurt runner, man. Just go. And he was coaching a team, and he was trying to teach these kids how to bunt. And one of them come up to him and said, Mr. Smith, said, we don't never see you bunt. He said, oh, do you want to see me bunt? He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bunt 3 times, and I'll beat 2 out of 3 of them out. And they laughed at him, you know. So he got up there and bunted, and he bunted 3 times, and he beat all 3 of them out. So they didn't ask him about his hitting anymore.
Another question, which I've heard you talk about before, after your honorable discharge, didn't the government contact you?
Oh, they sent me a draft notice and told me to report immediately. to the draft board that I was I hadn't registered, and so I got that. And Dad brought it to me, and he said, "Paul said they're calling you to be drafted." And I said, they can't do that." And he said, "Well, here's the letter." And it was, and it was a report. I just didn't. It wasn't calling me, and they told me report. So I went up there to the draft board, and I said, "What are y'all sending me this for?" And he said, "Why haven't you registered?" Of course, I was a year behind time on registering, you see. And I said, "I didn't have to register." He said, "You have to register anytime." I said, why haven't you registered?" I said, I wasn't here. And he said, "Well, where was you?" I said, "I was in the service." I said, "I've spent 3 years in there, and you all going to draft?" And they was going to send me straight from there. In other words, I bring your clothes, you gone. And but they finally got around to it, and I showed them my discharge and all that stuff, and they put me in 5A. That was my draft.
You were going to go after the old man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You bet. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming down and spending the time and sharing your stories with us. Thank you for the time you spent in the service to defend the country. It's, I'll tell you, your interview is a little different than most that we've done, Paul, but you tell a great story. There are a lot of things 40 years from now when somebody looks at this DVD that you're doing right now, I think they get a little flavor of how the country was right after the war.
Yeah.
You know, there are just a lot of things that you talk about that, well, things were maybe a little tougher after the war than what most people remember. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, but nothing was good. You know, they said Roosevelt brought us out of depression. Roosevelt didn't bring us out of no depression. War did. And then after the war, he was right back where we was at. Couldn't find a job, couldn't get nothing. So it was up in the 50s before we ever got out of the depression.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.